it was unjust for North Korea to move into South Korea, but so there was a just cause there, but that leaves open the question of whether then the proper response, the human response, the best response to that was to go to war, and therefore would be a just war. Well, not quite. We know now. We've 3 years of war in Korea. 2 to 3 million people dead in Korea, and at the end of it, we were back where we were when the war started, back to North Korea dictatorship, South Korea dictatorship. So it was a just cause. The question is, should we have gone to war? Did we go to war? And motivation is important, and therefore, it is important to ask whether motivations that are expressed are honest ones. And I think it's worth thinking about this question. Did George Bush Sr. go to war against Iraq in 1991 because he was heartbroken over the invasion of Kuwait? That's hard to believe. There have been other invasions. There have been other occupations. We don't go to war over every invasion, every occupation. Is it possible that there's something about Iraq and its oil reserves and the Middle East that prompted, again, the real taking over of Kuwait, but made that a very convenient excuse to move into Iraq and then to establish bases there, and the bases that we established in Saudi Arabia came directly out of that war. Last question. Oh.
My name's James. There's a current of American exceptionalism, if I'm not mistaken, that has to do with trying to explain why there hasn't been a strong social democracy in America like there has been in some, if not many, European countries. And I think probably the best known exponent of this is probably, and correct me if I'm mistaken, Seymour Martin Lipset, the Canadian political scientist, I think is one of the best known to put forward this attempt to explain American exceptionalism, i.e. the absence of a strong social democracy or even a stronger socialist movement. What's your take on this current of what is sometimes referred to as American exceptionalism, but more importantly, what's your take on the whole idea of trying to come to terms with, quote unquote, why there hasn't been a stronger movement for social democracy, realized social democracy in the United States, and parenthetically, how much would you say the incredible diversity in this country is part of the challenge that anybody interested in that programmatically has to come to terms with?
Well, James, you know that's a big question. And I don't deal with big questions. I do little ones. I like little questions. Well, you mentioned diversity. And, this is an issue which American historians and political scientists and so on have grappled with for a very long time. So here am I, MIT on this day, and I'm going to give the definitive final. After all these people have worked on this, I am going to tell you what the real truth is. Yes, of course. You mentioned you can give a number of reasons why we haven't had a very powerful, radical left movement in the United States. And you can find, yes, diversity, the size of the country, all the conflicts between immigrants and native-born, the pitting of people against one another, black against white, the reformism of the United States, the the doling out of little goodies to the middle class to create a large enough middle class to act as a buffer between the very rich and the very poor. There are a number of reasons for, I think, for the fact that it hasn't been a powerful movement in the United States. But I would add one more thing. I think there's a tendency on the part of a lot of people, I would never accuse you of this, James, but there are people who I think make too great a distinction between the United States, that is, who see too much exceptionalism there, too great a distinction between the United States and other post-industrial countries. You know, as if, well, these countries have great social movements, England, France, Italy, but the United States lags behind. I reject the idea of that sharp a distinction between these countries in Europe. Granted that, you know, sure, there's a big, powerful trade union movement in France, and there isn't a powerful trade union movement here, but we have had important social movements in this country from time to time, and we'll probably have one again, especially if things continue the way they are. And I think it's too easy to denigrate the amount of social protest and social organization and resistance that there has been in this country throughout our history. I mean, at the beginning of the 20th century, we had a very powerful socialist movement in this country. We've had radical labor unions at the beginning of the 20th century, and then again in the 30s with the CIO. The movements, the great movements of the 60s, very important social movements. You might say more, a certain way more, which had no counterpart. Really in Europe, except, you know, France, 68 and so on. But I guess what I'm saying is I don't think we're as exceptional as a lot of people make us out to be in lagging behind in the development of social movements and social consciousness. We have a long way to go. That's the last question? Okay.